Welcome to 21st Century Saints, our podcast and live stream series for members and those affiliated with, those adjacent to, those who hang around the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints here in the United Kingdom and around the world. I think our live stream is up and running. I'm going to take an extra wee second just to check that though tonight, just to make sure, because we're broadcasting on Facebook and on YouTube, so we're just going to be quiet for a moment. Alana, would you be able to check if we're broadcasting okay?
How much people are
on? I think we're looking good, but we'll just make sure. Yeah, we've got some comments in the live stream. Hello to
I was going to say, we're definitely live on Facebook and obviously we're live on YouTube because somebody said hello.
Everything looking good then. Hi, everyone. Okay, so tonight is a bit of a last minute decision. I've been sort of trying to work out all week how we want to approach this. Conference was last week. And, you know, our Alana here is a huge fan of conference. And how many sessions did you get to watch, girl?
A big fat 0. No, that's a 0.
Oh, okay. You and most of the rest of the world, right? I'm hardcore. And
I've got better things to do with my time than sit and listen to old men chatting a load of crap.
And so say many of the folk around the world who just head off social media for the weekend because they just can't.
Yep.
Every year there's some good stuff. There's often some good stuff. A lot of time that good stuff is mixed with some more problematic stuff. I wanted to talk about specifically one particular talk that had really affected me. And hopefully we're going to try and go use their technology and do the screen share thing so that you can see a little bit. So I want to first of all give you guys a little bit of a trigger warning that we are going to be hearing a little bit of this conference talk. The other thing I'm dreading doing this for is because I don't want it to sound like a really rubbish Sunday school lesson or a really rubbish Relief Society priesthood lesson where you're just listening to tiny little bits of this talk and then pausing it and then coming back to talk about it. Except I think that in this case, there are things that I really want to hit on. There are things that I think my hope is that this talk, that it will be covered this in the next 6 months in classes. And you know what happens, right, Alana? You get the rare occasion where there's like something that speaks so powerfully and then it's handled really, really poorly in class discussions. And it's just, it just ends up making you feel worse. And I think particularly because it's mental health, there's a likelihood of that happening with us. So I wanted us, because we feel really passionately about this subject, we have a lot to say about this subject. I wanted us just to sort of go through it and nitpick what sucks, what's problematic, what do we need to say something about, and what do we need to expand on. Does that sound like a plan?
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to see if the screen share will work. If it doesn't work, then we're just going to do that really awful thing where we read out little sections of it. Alana, do you want to read out this comment from
mental health being addressed in GA? They are feckin' crazy.
Okay, so I'm gonna hit the screen share button and hopefully this will work. One moment. And maybe our audience can let us know if this is going to work okay. So we're going to show this.
It's working today.
I know, it's because I've been practicing my technology. I could
hear myself back there.
Right, we're right over here. Can you see that? Okay. So hopefully this will work, and maybe you all could let us know. And we're just going to pause this, just in sections, okay?
Even though our family has enjoyed rich blessings while joyfully walking the covenant path, we have also faced exceedingly high mountains. I wish to share some very personal experiences regarding mental illness. These include clinical depression, severe anxiety, bipolar disorder, ADHD, and sometimes a combination of them all.
Okay, so I'm pausing there already. Did you guys get to hear that? Yes, I think the comments are...
I know at my end it was a bit echoey, like feedy, but it was happening when I was speaking as well, so I don't know if it was just because I'm on the live or whether it was sounded the same for everyone else.
So I'm really enjoying, like, straight off PD is saying that this talk turned to stomach. This was not the talk for PD. We're going to dig into why. I'd love to hear more about that. So first of all, I'm pausing there because he mentions types of mental health that isn't just, we know all about anxiety. We know about mental health because they've maybe, there's something, and maybe one of them has experienced a little bit of depression, anxiety, and so they then have all the answers. He talks about bipolar disorder, ADHD. I mean, it kind of surprised me that he got specific.
Yeah.
So I like that. I see. Priesthood Dispatches is letting us know why we're getting a little bit of echo. Okay, but it's not too bad apparently. So
it was bearable. It was bearable.
Yeah, if it starts annoying you guys, then just we'll deal. Okay, so I'm gonna just head back to... Okay.
I share these tender experiences with the approval of those involved. During my ministry, I have encountered hundreds of individuals and families with similar experiences. Sometimes I wonder if the desolating sickness covering the land, as mentioned in the scriptures, might include mental illness. It is worldwide, covering every continent and culture, and affecting all, young, old, rich, and poor. Members of the church have not been excluded. At the same time, our doctrine teaches...
So, can we talk about that for a moment? You're all checking out my Facebook page. Yeah, so it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere. And what I really like is that he's starting off by talking about, often we can make it sound like it's just a Western culture thing. It's just, it's because we've got so much. It's mental health affects every culture, every demographic. And he's really clear on that. I love how he pulls in the scriptures. This is what we can expect. This is what's going to happen. Yeah. I also want to just give a shout out to our Alana, who's pulling double duty tonight as a parent. And
talk about mental health.
You're doing great. You're doing really great. Okay, we're gonna.
I was just going to say, like when you were saying there about mental health, every culture and things, like I used to just think mental health was only specific to certain people, but I kind of view it now that everyone does have mental health. But some people just manage theirs better. So every person in the world has mental health, but it's how it's cultivated and looked after. I used to think, it's just me who's got mental health or so-and-so because we've got diagnosed things. But every person has mental health, but some people just go through life where it doesn't affect them or they do things that allow them not to have severe mental health. I know obviously sometimes it is chemicals in the brain and things like that as well, but yeah, anyway.
our friend of the show, Scott Brandon, mentions Elder Holland, and I think as soon as someone's talking from their own lived experience, immediately it makes me listen and have more respect, because as soon as someone is talking about mental health who just doesn't get it, who's not really experienced it, you can theorize all you like. And that's one of the reasons why I liked this talk, because he's actually not necessarily, he's talking about his own experiences, but the people who really experienced mental health were those in his immediate family. So I'm gonna hit the play button again. I feel like I'm spinning plates here, guys. Sorry about this. Okay, so I'm going to hit the play button again.
Us to strive to become like Jesus Christ and be perfected in him. Our children sing, I'm trying to be like Jesus. We long to be perfect, even as our Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ are perfect. Because mental illness can interfere with our perception of perfection, it remains all too often a taboo. As a result, there is too much ignorance, too much silent suffering, and too much despair. Many, feeling overwhelmed because they do not meet perceived standard, mistakenly believe they have no place in the church.
Okay, so that was the first. I think by this point, I'm like, okay, Elder Kopischke, I am listening. We've seen him speak a few times in area conferences. Because he's in Europe, he's someone that we've heard a few times. This was him being honest and vulnerable, and so he speaks about it as a taboo. It's something that we don't really speak about. He says it's a taboo because we sort of try to achieve these standards of perfection. I'm not really sure if that's why it's taboo. I think it's a lot more complicated than that.
See, when he said about striving to be like the Saviour and the perfection, it actually made me cringe inside. But then when he went on, it kind of thought, right, okay,
Yes.
But I was a bit like, oh,
because that's where we go with it, right?
Yeah.
It's the we just give it all to the Saviour and we're good, and we use the atonement and we're good.
Yeah.
Or
I was just about to say that when I seen PD's comment there, because I've had that very same experience, not with a therapist, but just with church members who, as I say, are not trained, like the leaders, to deal with mental health, and just give it all to the Saviour, and what I went through was pretty horrific in my life, and it's all good and well that you can talk to Heavenly Father and you can give it over to the Saviour and his atonement, but it's more than that. And I think that's something the church really need to stress to their leaders is when it's severe mental health, not just someone who's gone in with just a wee problem, or a wee issue. When it's clear mental health, you need to point them to the right people. You need to try and get them to go and get proper help from GPs, therapists, psychologists. You can't just rely on giving it to the Saviour. It doesn't work. I've tried it and it doesn't work. I ended up in worse states and ended up in hospital because I tried to do that, and then eventually I realised, no, I need to go and get the proper help. So that's something that I do get a bit antsy about, is when you hear people, saying, oh, just give it all to the Saviour, he'll make it all right. And
yeah. I want to dig into that a bit more. And what we're going to maybe do is kind of have a little bit of, push and pull here. We might sort of be bumping up against some opinions that I don't know. I just want to throw some things out there. So I one of the first things I remember someone saying to me whenever there was really a mental health epidemic in our ward, and I remember someone saying, because they'd felt like priesthood leadership specifically, but just priesthood in general, by the time you got your home teachers, and it was home teachers at the time. Can I just keep saying home teachers?
Yeah, it's easier. I don't know how to properly use ministering, and I don't like it, to be perfectly honest.
It means I can explain the difference between men and women. I'm going to keep saying that because I feel like we're just calling a banana an orange and it's something. So I'm going to keep saying that. Okay, so because it felt like there was this intrusiveness, I think, or everybody somehow, even if it was part of their responsibilities to care for your family, it felt really intrusive. So I remember some of those conversations, and I remember, you know, a friend of ours saying, you know, you don't have to tell anyone anything. It's none of their business. And, you know, that was something that they had really, really discovered. And while I get that, and I think it's 100% right, I think that's something really important to know, is that, you know, your business is your business. No one has the right to your information. No one has the right to know what's going on in your life unless they're paying a price and you have that relationship with them. That's why I kind of feel, you know, oversharing. It's like, you know, if you haven't earned your space in my life, then you're not entitled to me, or to, you know, to my story. I don't know how you're going to treat my story. But that said, you know, a few years ago, and this was at the same time while they were feeling like pulling away from priesthood leadership, I was speaking to my bishop, I was speaking to my home teachers, and good friends, and I felt it really beneficial. Not as a therapist, but I think, so this is what I want to put out there. Tell me what you think of this. The more support you have around you when you are having a mental health flare up, shall we say, whatever level that is, you know, dramatic or, you know, a big one, a small one, the more support you have around you, the better. What if that support that you have around you is your bishop, your home teachers and things? So I guess what I'm saying is, talk to us about your experience of that.
Well, I guess looking back now, having the support from the church leaders wasn't helpful, in my opinion. So I personally now, if I had issues with mental health things, I probably wouldn't go to a church leader about it. You know, I would use my family, my friends, you know, and I would seek, if it was bad enough, I would seek professional help again. Because again, you know, church leaders like bishops, Relief Society presidents, they're not trained in mental health. They don't know the right things to say. As I said, when I did my big interview on mental health and my life story, you know, things that were said to me really harmed me. You know, when I was trying to open up to people about things that had happened to me and things, like the way it was worded, and I know the person didn't necessarily mean it to harm me, but it did. And it's because, like, the way I view it is, it's, if you don't know what to say in that moment, just shut up. Sorry for saying that, but if you don't know the right thing to say, or you worry that it might not be the right thing to do, you just shut up, you know. But again, there's this thing in the church about, but they rely on the Spirit. It's the Spirit telling them what to say. Well, that's a load of BS, because if you're going to say something that's going to harm someone and make them feel worse, then it's not the right thing to say, and it's not the Spirit, in my opinion. So I personally wouldn't. The
Spirit could be saying, shut up.
Yeah. And they're like, what are you on about? So yeah, I personally, I think, yes, it's good to have a good support system around you, but I personally wouldn't use church. Now, on the other side of that, you know, like there's someone within our ward who doesn't really have anyone else he's got severe mental health, and he's not got a great family support. So in that instance, you know, they don't have anywhere else to go for support, you know, other than the church leaders. But again, they need to make sure that they're getting him the right help then, you know. In that instance where I had to end up dropping my child off to someone's house and go to a hospital with him because the leaders didn't give us stuff and were basically saying go home and leave him, which I didn't do, you know. So sometimes the support isn't always there, you know. So I try to see it kind of both sides, but in my opinion, if you've got family support and you've got other people you can turn to, go to them. And they don't even know what to say, but at least it's your family and they can hopefully point you in the right direction of proper help.
Could I jump in then? Because I think from what you're saying, there's a few things that I want to pick up. Right. First of all, if you have the time to jump into the comments, for our audience, if you've got time to jump into the comments, there is some great things being said, and I'm hoping that we can, you know, get back and address some of those comments. Fantastic chat going on, so thank you to our audience for that. The person that we're talking about who has severe mental health issues and has no family or little family support, I think actually that's worth discussing. I think if all that you have got as a church, if all you have is church support, I mean, it theoretically it's wonderful, but the damage that can be caused.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it does have support from mental health, but in my opinion, it's not enough.
Yeah, well,
and it's because they're so far stretched, you know.
It could, well, yes, and so here, my thoughts on this is that when you are a church, so this is where it plays out in a very Mormon way. There are churches all over the world supporting people with mental health, conditions. There are so many different types of mental health conditions, and people are just figuring that out. The difference here is that we've got so many good-natured, willing people who want to help. We want our church is a church of fixers, so we want to do something, and we want that to be measurable. And the other side of it is, because we're Mormons, we believe in continuing revelation. We believe that it's possible for us to have an actual communication from God, from angels, from the Savior. We believe that those things are available to us all. They're really sacred. We don't talk about it. So because of that, when you have somebody with a condition, for example, schizophrenia, if that voice you're hearing, if we talk about, you can hear the voice of the Spirit. I just think it's awfully, awfully dangerous waters that we're treading in for particular types of mental health condition, and therefore the damage that can be done when taking someone to the hospital, what you're saying you're doing, wonderful. It also might not be the best thing. I mean, it might be the best thing. Also, it might be that person really needed support that looks slightly different in their own community, and that that social services needed to be made aware of that. We absolutely, we can't do the thing where Bishop knows about it and this is too much because Bishop's got a family. We don't have a paid ministry, and so we are limited in what we are able to do. I don't know.
See, I kind of feel although we're not a paid ministry, and I know but you take on that responsibility knowing that you're not paid, and you can't just leave someone in the lurch. I get that this person we're talking about can be hard work, but to just say, without mentioning, to say, it's just all in his head, just leave him and go home, of course it's all in his head because he's got a severe mental illness. Does that mean I just walk away and leave him, on his own in a hospital late at night when he could just wander off and, goodness knows what happens? That's just, I get, now had it been through the day, I wouldn't have been, just going to the hospital with him. I'd have been saying, right, who can we contact? Mental health people. But I thought by turning to my bishop that he would say, right, okay, I'll be there or I'll send somebody, but I got the total opposite, and I was so angry. I remember feeling so angry because I'm like, this is why people fall through the cracks. And I'm not saying, I get that this person is hard work, and I get that, it can't be easy for a bishop, but I'm not saying that bishops should have just up and left and went and sorted it, but I just feel there should have been a wee bit more of responsibility taken to try and either, because I do believe there is a family member. There is a family member on his side. I don't think there's the best relationship there, but to find some sort of support or help for him, he was also let down by the mental health services that night. He didn't get hospitalised, but then went to an appointment the next day and they got him hospitalised because they knew that he had to be in hospital, so I guess, I'm not trying to put all the blame on the leaders because, I know it's not easy, and especially the fact that it's not paid, but I still think there has to be a level of responsibility when you take on that role as a bishop or a Relief Society president. You're doing that knowing you're not getting paid, and you still have to give a little bit to supporting someone, especially if they don't have that support. That's different if it was me and I was turning and saying, I really need help. They can contact my parents, they can contact you, they can contact my sisters, or, and say, look, Alana really needs help. We need you guys to get the support, because I've got people. But for me, when it's someone who doesn't really have the best support system, someone needs to step up and say, what can we do here to get him the help that he needs? And that's just my opinion. I'm not saying it's right, but that's just my opinion.
No, you do. And there's some excellent things that I want to this wonderful series of comments here that's being shared. I really want to dig into that some, but I'd like to come back to something else that you say about, Alana, you were saying also, get in touch with family. So I think with you and with me, when you put a certain amount of work into your mental, so for our audience who don't know, so I suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder. And always smile when I say that, because it's not the oh, you're so OCD, like actual OCD.
Yeah, it's not the one where people say, oh, my books aren't sitting straight, or they're not in order, or
yeah, drives me crazy. Alana witnessed me having a full-blown rage attack because someone in the supermarket said to us, oh, it's just my OCD. And like, when you have an OCD meltdown, you're ill. You're so and Alana, you've seen me this past few days. I've had a real flare up for this past few days, and it is not pleasant. Alana, you also do you want to talk about your mental health background?
Yeah, so I have borderline personality disorder, or as they like to call it, I don't like either one of these terms, emotionally unstable disorder. So basically,
different name. What did I call it? Emotional processing.
Yeah. But it is more to do with that. It's how I process my emotions, and my emotions are very heightened. And I can, there's loads of pointers. I would need to dig them all out, like things like, like not being able to stay in a job too long, that was all part of it. When they read out all the kind of list of things that can be affected, like it made total sense to me, all the weird and wonderful things that I did in my life. So yeah, it's more about my emotional state, because when I first heard it, I was like, does that mean like I'm borderline for like having split personalities, because I didn't know what it was at first, but I now understand it, that it's just to do with my emotions. Like what I say is, if you imagine, if you're just, I always say normal person, but I don't really mean, because define what normal actually is, and you have, somebody upsets you and it affects you a little bit, like I always say, magnify that by probably 100 or 1,000, and that's how I feel like my emotions. I can be, I don't know how to describe it. It's like I'm usually either away down here or away up there, and it shows a lot of time. That's why if you're ever speaking to me, or and I start to feel a bit anxious, I'll I'll start talking very fast and things like that, because my emotions are just not catching up.
Yeah, can I jump in and just, so what you just said there. So I've been Alana's friend while Alana, when you got your diagnosis and all of this, and I kind of see it almost a bit like the emotional version of autism, where the sensory processing in autism, your sense of smell just can be so heightened that it's really distressing, auditory stuff. There's lots of things that with you, it's your emotions are just, either dampened down or very heightened. But so I found this so helpful when I've tried to understand something about my autistic child, and you've been able to say, oh, I know.
Yeah, I know exactly how he's feeling.
This feels like, and you were able to explain to me what that feeling felt like, because it's almost like a superpower that you seem to be able to take on an emotion, feel it, and that can be so distressing for you. And so yes, if someone falls out with you, if you're angry, it's dialed up to 11. Yeah, but also when you switch off, you can just switch off. So, but when you described being up here or down there, could you talk about that in terms of when you were speaking to church leadership? And I want to pull into that these wonderful comments from Donald, where you had mentioned, Donald, feeling, what was it, patronised, feeling I'm just going to scroll back up and find it, condescended to. So Alana, you're speaking to your bishop because you're really upset about something that's happened, that you're saying, look, this is a situation and this is not okay. And the church leader used that phrase, well, Alana, when you're up here, you're up here. I know you're trying to remember.
No, I'm like, I do remember the conversation, but I'm thinking, what exact term did he use?
when you use the
Yeah,
exact...
he basically called me out on my own mental health, basically, when I was saying that I didn't think something was okay. So he was basically using my mental health against me in that instance. And I was furious. And then I told Jane, and she was even more furious.
So you're messing, my friend. Well, but he used the same exact... You just used the exact same term as they did. How come it was different?
Because I felt like he was using that against me from what I was saying. It wasn't, for me, it wasn't just, talking about my mental health. That wasn't the instance. I was talking about something that really bothered me that I felt wasn't okay. And I felt like it was an attack against me. Like saying that that's why I was feeling the way I was feeling. I understand that my emotions can be very up there and I can go from there to there in an instant. But to feel like it's been used against you because of something you feel, it really made me feel almost this small, because I'm like, then you start to question yourself. You start to question yourself, think, is this why I'm feeling this way? But it wasn't. It was because the thing that I was talking about was not okay, and many people told me that. But you then begin to question yourself, and you do question, is this just me?
And the other thing is that when you're talking about when you're up here and down here, you're talking about your emotions, you're talking about not even just your emotions, your maybe your energy levels.
Yeah, my mood sometimes as well. I always feel like
energy.
Although it has been better the last while, I'm very seldom in the middle. I'm usually somewhere between that, but I wouldn't say there's ever a happy medium with my emotions or my mood. I'm usually quite low or quite high, and it is noticed by people. Like, I was out on a night out on Monday night with my sister and at our gig, and like, I was talking to someone, and just because it's someone I don't really know that well, I do start to get quicker and quicker when I speak. And she was like, just, and it was okay, because I understand it can be hard work for people when I'm giving it, but I just said that. But it was funny because she said, you're just like your sister, because Laura gets like that a little bit as well, and she was the sweetest older lady. And I know there was no, sometimes when people say it, in the past when people have said that to me, and bless my mum, like, there's times I've wanted to punch my mum's face because she'll go, take it, and sometimes it's just how it's put across can make all the difference, and so with that little lady, there was no animosity, it was not, an attack or anything. She was just saying to me, take a wee breath, Kat, and I was like, oh, I know, I said I try so hard not to, but it can be difficult when I'm in situations where I feel a bit anxious, and
if you have to explain your mental health, I know it's well-meaning, but it's also just people can advise you, don't do that. Don't do that.
I know it is a bit annoying, because it's like I can't help it. Like, I try so hard, and in my head sometimes I feel like I'm speaking slowly. Like, my mental health professional used to say that to me, and I'm like, but I feel like I'm speaking slow. Like, in my brain I was speaking slow, but she's like, no, you're rambling.
I think that the trick is, so for example, we'll do this podcast, and there'll be times when you or I have when either way ahead, or you've covered maybe 5 different things that we need to go back to the second thing to kind of to pay a bit more attention to that thing, because I don't want you just to go past that without us jumping into that. And so the way you deal with that is just to pull someone back, is just to say, okay, can I, let's just pull you back to that part there. Let's go back to that part there. Talking about, drawing attention to how someone's communicating it's really, really unhelpful. I would suggest, and even when we know that someone's doing it with the best of intentions.
But again, people are just uneducated in how to deal with mental health, because years ago it was so shut down, it was not talked about, and I think that's where there needs to be more education, not just within the church, just in society in general, on the things not to say to people with mental health. Because, I'm well aware that I rabble, and to have it consistently pointed out all the time can be a bit frustrating and cause me to feel even more emotions that I don't want to feel, because it can be frustrating, because you're like, I feel like saying sometimes, I know it's my mental health, I can't help it, and that sometimes people are well-meaning with it, but just sometimes you want to say, just be quiet, like, leave it alone,
Exactly. So what we were talking about when you were speaking to a church leader, because I feel like the comment from Doug was such a wonderful one there, that Mormon clergy don't have training. The instinct is to punish. So if you're saying that you are feeling something that they're perceiving as a negative emotion, that you're feeling a lot of big feelings about, you're angry, or something needs to change, or whatever that looks like, the instinct then is, the answer is that, well, you're doing something wrong. So when they say when you're up here, they mean spiritually up here. When you're down there, so when you're very low spiritually, and there's not, I would say, for so many, particularly male leaders, they can't tell the difference between what an emotional response is, what an anxiety response is, what, maybe something as a consequence of low spirituality, or just, somebody ballsing up and they've sinned. And I use that term very loosely.
Jane, I need to come and get that dog by the throat. Honestly, Jane will tell you she's got this person over the back from her, and they just let their dog bark and bark. And honestly, I love dogs, but it frustrates the life out of me. I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, because it's distracting me, like it's the two things,
Talk to me about how you would like priesthood leaders to deal with it when you approach them then.
I guess just, I guess the main thing that I would say, and I've always said, is this is where I think some form of training needs to come in within the church. And I'm not saying full mental health training, because it takes years and years for somebody to study. Well, not years and years, but a good few years for somebody to study on mental health to be a professional. But I think some level of training on, like, I think I talked about before, about knowing what to say and what not to say, what's helpful, what's not helpful, and I think, when I look back, I think, if you're truly guided by the Spirit, then these things wouldn't be said, in my opinion, and so a lot of it is just their own thoughts, their own feelings. And again, I think sometimes they're too quick to answer. And I think, as I say, that sometimes, it's okay to pause for a few moments to think about what someone said without just jumping in and saying the wrong thing. Like, even just to say to the person, look, just give me a few minutes to think about that, would be okay, because I just think it's more damaging if you say the wrong thing. So I guess I feel there needs to be some kind of training within the church. I've always spoke about that now for a while. And I guess just not always trying to fix people. I think church leaders need to realise that they're not therapists. They're not addiction therapists. They're not, whatever they need be. So if they don't know how to help, don't just try and guess what you need to say, or say the typical things, get on your knees and pray and read your scriptures and attend church and attend all your meetings. These things don't work when it comes to these things. Yeah, they possibly help to a certain degree because, you're spiritually in touch with God, if you believe in God, but it's not what's going to help when it comes to mental health or addiction or things like that. It doesn't work. You need the proper help. So they need to make sure that they let the people know that they love them. They're there to support them in any way they can, but, or maybe not but, because always the but always sounds a bit, but just say, we need to get you in touch with some people who can help you. I think that's the route they need to go down. They need to stop trying to fix people themselves and stop thinking that they're professionals. They're not professionals. They're men. They're human. They need to direct people to correct help. And if that person struggles, because you know what I'm like, Jane, when it comes to phoning people, or phoning doctors and things. So sometimes I need a bit of additional support for that. So again, offer that support. If they're not able to phone these places themselves, say, I'll come with you, I'll help you speak to them, and, support them in that way, but stop trying to give them the answers to, your problems when you don't have the answers.
Someone's just asking if the stream's cut out. So can I maybe ask if our audience could just confirm if we're still broadcasting okay? I think we're looking good. It might be just your stream, Doug. Yeah, we're still getting some comments in, so I think we're good. I love what you're saying. it is a very Christian
Yeah, we're
thing,
definitely on.
particularly a Mormon thing, to try and we're solution based. We're, especially Relief Society, you know, the job is, there is a job, and we can treat each other as a job. At times it is blooming brilliant, but when it comes to, let me take what you're saying about, you know, fixing, about how we can't fix people. Here's the thing. Even if my bishop, my Relief Society president, my ministering sister, even if you could fix my problems, do not try and fix my problems. You have no right to fix my problems. My problems, my challenges, you know, as we like to call them, they're mine. And they're my experiences, and you have no right to take away from me the fact that I need to be experiencing this and dealing with it in the right way for me. You know, that doesn't mean, you know, there are times that I'm asking for help. Sometimes it has been, my OCD is so bad, I really needed someone, because we also have a disabled child in the house. My other children have been thrown into the role of carers, and they don't get a break. And even when they go to school and they have to learn, and it's a very intense life when, you know, there is so much caring to be done. And so sometimes the help I need is just, can you take my kid out to the park for a little bit next time you're going out with your kids? Can you just not forget them? And that's huge. If you're going to do something practical, that's great. But for the most part, as much as the answer is not go to church, read your scriptures, but sometimes, you know, the answer for me can be, will you sit and talk to me about Jesus? Will you sit and talk to me about how was church on Sunday when I couldn't be there? Tell me, what did you learn this week that you can share with me that will help me in my week? Will you speak to me about, will you pray with me? Will you tell me about the thing that you read in the scriptures? And so often we're saying those are the answers, but we're not willing to get down in the trenches with someone.
Yep.
So I think, yeah, shut up and listen. And then if you're going to speak to me, just hold my hand and speak to me.
Well, I was going to say that. I think sometimes it's not even like, I know in the past when I've went to speak to somebody, sometimes it's just about getting it out there. It's not that I'm looking for you to have all the answers or know what to say. Because like, you'll know with you and I, Jane, like if something happens that really, you know, affects me, you know, whether it's with my child's dad or with family or, you know, I just need to get it out my system. And so Jane's my go-to. And so I phone her and I just go to town, I just blurt it all out, and see at the end I can go, you know, because I've got it out there, I've got it out my system. And sometimes that's all I need. I'm not necessarily looking for Jane to be like, you know, well, maybe if you could do this, or maybe if you look at it this way, because again, you know, I've got people in my family who are very good at that, and how about you look at it this way? And sometimes you're like, shut up, I don't want you to tell me, look at it this way, I just want you to let me get it out my system, you know. And sometimes that's all someone needs, is just to get it out their system. I'm not looking for you to fix me, I'm not looking for you to have all the answers, I just need to get it out my system. And sometimes that's, I'm not saying that's the case for everyone, but certainly for me, you know. And when I'm saying, you know, about me getting out there, you know, I don't need Jane to fix me, but I love it when she goes in a good rant with me and says, aye, and this, and, you know, gets tore right in with me. I love it. But sometimes that's all you need, is just to know that someone's got your back, they're listening.
Yeah,
we call that venting in the US.
Like that when, well, yeah,
yeah, we say venting too.
It doesn't always feel like that whenever we are speaking to someone from church, and we would call it the churchy answers, right? When we are speaking to someone from church about what we're struggling with or what our pain is, we're opening up and being vulnerable, and it doesn't feel like they're on our team. We're not being heard. We're not being listened to. It doesn't matter to them. They're not taking it seriously. Yeah.
I'm just looking at Scott Brandon's comment there. It's absolutely just, that's why I went, oh. A mother went through mental health problems. Our state president showed up and took her kids away for 6 hours so she could de-stress. That's what it's all about. it's looking for those wee moments where, what can I do to help? I mean, I remember, you know, when I was younger, occasionally when there was a mum there with kids on her own, or, you know, maybe the father was on the stand, you know, I used to see who I could help and even just go sit with them to help with the kids during sacrament meeting, you know, and it's those wee small things that matter. You know, it's if you see someone sitting with a tear in their eye, you know, go sit by them and put your arm around them. Or, I mean, I know it's a bit difficult with COVID and stuff now, but, you know, even things like, you know, there's a sister in our ward who used to sit beside someone who has now passed on, and she used to sit with her because she's got illnesses, but she falls asleep a lot, and sometimes you're worried she's going to hit her head. And so I seen that need and realised, and obviously Eunice hadn't passed it, I'm using names, hadn't passed at that time, but she just wasn't there that Sunday, and I just went over and sat by her and supported her up, you know. And I'm not saying that to blow one trumpet, but what I'm saying is it's sometimes just those little things where we see a need and we're just there. We're not speaking, we're not saying things, but we're just letting people know, we've got you, we're here to support you, whatever you need. You know, it's not about verbalising the answers, or, you know, it's just being there. It's just being there.
Just so that doesn't get lost. A sister who would fall asleep in church, a vulnerable sister who needed a lot of care and support, who would fall asleep, and she needed a sister. She didn't need a sister. I mean, she would have slept anyway, but a sister would come and sit next to her so that she had someone to rest her head against.
It's just because quite often she would look like she was going to go down and bang her head, you know, and I think that did actually happen in the Relief Society one time, if I remember correctly. She went forward and banged her head, you know. So it's just those small things, you know. I think we always think we've got to do this big extravagant thing, you know, to be there for people, but we don't. It's the small things that matter.
Amen. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this talk because there's more stuff that's coming, and I want us to frame this. We're going to come back and talk in a moment about family and the place of family in our mental health. Now, I want to acknowledge, first of all, our dear Gary had mentioned that this is someone who's talking about their son's mental health, and let's just say we're very good at doing that in church, using family stories that maybe don't always get permission for our talks and things in church. I like to think that he would have, but let's face it, it happens a lot. Often we sort out our baggage from the pulpit. That's problematic. So I'm going to jump back over, and we're going to share this on the screen again and see the next little bit of this talk.
To combat such deception, it is important to remember that the Savior loves each of his Father's children. He fully comprehends the pain and struggle that many experience as they live with a broad range of mental health challenges. He suffered pains and afflictions and temptations of every kind, taking upon him the pains and the sickness of his people. Because he understands all afflictions, he knows how to heal the brokenhearted. Challenges often indicate a need for additional tools and support and are not a character defect. Allow me to share several observations I made as our family has passed through trials. First, many people will mourn with us. They won't judge us. Due to severe panic attacks, anxiety, and depression, our son returned home from his mission just after 4 weeks. As his parents, we found it difficult to deal with disappointment and sadness because we had prayed so much for his success. Like all parents, we want our children to prosper and be happy. A mission was to be an important milestone for our son. We also wondered what other people might think. Unbeknownst to us, our son's return was infinitely more devastating for him. Note that he loved the Lord and wanted to serve, and yet he could not for reasons he struggled to understand.
Okay, so that I'm jumping in a wee bit earlier than I would like to, because I think it's really important to talk about that for a second. He talks about the suffering Saviour, the Saviour being able to heal, and things like that. Things that when you're in a low place, the idea of a healing saviour is like a balm to me. It might not be to everyone, and I think that's important to recognise. But he speaks, and I love this. So it would be really easy for us to say, you're talking about your kids' mental health and their mission experience, and you're worrying about what other people think. It would be so easy.
That really got my back up. Like, I was sitting here like,
But yeah,
but again, it's such a church Mormon thing, though, that we worry about what other people think rather than how it affects the person that's going through it.
What I loved about it is that was bloody honest. That was real. And if we are all going to kid ourselves that in his position, we would not bat an eyelid or think, oh, what's everybody else going to think? Now, I think ideally we wouldn't even think that way at all. But realistically, we're social people who've been brought up in the church. You know there's expectations. You know that when you marry, you're probably going to be expected to marry in a temple. You're expected to not have sex before marriage. You're expected you're going to serve a mission. You're expected things will look a certain way. And if how much of mental health issues are created by what we think the world should look like. I'm phrasing this badly. For me, I feel very, very distressed, and it tends to aggravate my mental health when I think this is really, really wrong. Things should look like this, and it's not fair that they don't. And I become so distressed by the thought, genuinely distressed by the thought, that I find it difficult to see past it. I find it difficult to accept sometimes things as they actually are. And I think it's a really helpful tool for our mental health if we can say, you know what? I worry about how it's going to look. I worry about how I'm going to feel about how other people will see me. I understand this part of how I naturally think, and I'm going to choose to let it go. When we're talking about this idea of perfection that he mentions at the start, we want to be perfect. We have this goal, and we're saying it's us who want to be perfect. Yeah, I think we do want to be, good and better and the best, but also it is very much a church and society expectation. When we grieve, it's expected we will grieve a certain way. When we are angry, we should look, we can be angry within certain parameters, if at all. So if we are going to say that we will never think, what are they going to think about me if my son comes home early? How about if we apply the principles of positive mental health to that situation and just acknowledge, yeah, you're going to feel like that, and you know what, you were honest about it, and you accept, you understood that, you recognized that you felt that way, and you let it go because you loved your son more than you loved what those expectations were. I would love that to be our church experience. So I'm going to jump back over to the stream again and just go from there.
He soon found himself at a point of total hopelessness, battling deep guilt. He no longer felt accepted, but spiritually numb. He became consumed by recurring thoughts of death. While in this irrational state, our son believed that the only action left was to take his own life. It took the Holy Ghost and a legion of angels on both sides of the veil to save him. While he was...
I am going to just cut off there again. So I'm determined to show everyone my Facebook page as I'm jumping back across. Okay. Do you know what? Let's just read this out, this brilliant comment. Advice to parents from Doug. Let your kids be who they want to be, not who you want them to be. Beautifully put. We're coming to the point in the talk where we start to talk about suicidal ideation. So we are going to just put out a trigger warning for that. It's close to our hearts. He mentions the word, in the sense he uses the word irrational. Here's the thing. It's very, to me, when I am thinking I hurt so much that I want it to stop, it's a very rational thing to think that I could just go home. I could just go home to my Heavenly Father, and I will feel peace, and I will feel loved, and I have confidence in where I'm going, and this will not hurt anymore. I guess I'm calling out the label irrational, because I think what happens when you experience suicidal ideation is you can become laser focused. Things suddenly look very, very clear. And it's rational to think, if this hurts, to want it to stop, to want it to stop hurting. That said, the reason I mention this is because I think we have to get away from the idea that when someone is experiencing suicidal ideation, thoughts of self-harm, or extremely distressing, unwanted thoughts or disturbing thoughts, that it would look a certain way, it will look irrational, it will look, the behaviour may have some kind of signal that I can see, oh, that's not rational. Actually, when people are experiencing suicidal ideation, they can become so calm, so organised, that it's a bit of a shock, because you're not seeing distressed, rocking, head in the hands. Suddenly everything's very, very clear. And I'm pointing this out as one of the signs that often is overlooked when someone is suicidal. There can be distress followed by utter calm. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that. The other thing that I wanted to share was the idea that when he talked about how his son was saved by a legion of angels on the other side of the veil, it's probably not the story for here, but I had a powerful experience, a series of powerful experiences that I would describe in the same terms. Less supernatural than I think I'm making it sound here, but the fact is that if we're just leaving it to sort of heaven to sort out, I would say prayers are always really important when our loved ones are struggling. Praying for someone is something that, when I learned people were doing that for me, a few years ago, Alana and I were really close at the time when I completely broke. And I over a weekend, this, very much the way Elder Kopischke describes his son's life was at risk. That I just wanted to go home. And I had went to a hotel, and I thought, this is where I will make the decision and make my choice about what I'm going to do, very rationally. I had a really powerful experience, but the experience that I had with people who were here, with Alana, who I knew, who was just being my constant, with people who were out just doing good in the world, people that I knew, who I bumped into, who were just out ministering to others, and let me see how much goodness and hope that there was. That was a powerful spiritual experience for me. And we tend to not, really get super spiritual on this show. We more talk about experiences and how we're experiencing Mormonism. I just wanted to share that as people are doing their thing, and it made a difference. It made a difference to me.
Thank you. I don't want to take away from all your lovely words,
No,
but
please.
see, I just, like, how I always say, like, we can't blame the church for everything, but I get my back up a little bit with the fact that his son was even feeling suicidal for that reason, because of the shame of coming home from his mission, because that should never be the case. And, we know growing up in the church, and I've spoke about it before, we are taught, you've got to serve an honourable mission, you've got to stay out for the full time. And, some people do say, I've heard stories again of missionaries who are saying, if you don't go on a mission, you'll be out in your ear, you won't have anywhere to stay, or, all these pressures put on. And I think if that, now I'm not saying that guy might have not had mental health or suicide ideations for other reasons, but I just think we really need to, there's like, when I say this change in the church, that's one of the biggest things, is we need to stop, again, this shame and this, you go and you do your Bessie mission. I almost came home from my mission. My parents didn't let me, and my mission president told me he was keeping me there kicking and screaming, you need to be here, and I'm glad that they did. But I had mental health in my mission. I did not want to stay. I was wanting to go home. I was on the other side of the world, which was probably a good thing, being in New Zealand, or I think I'd have been on a plane home, whereas the cost of a plane ticket from New Zealand was too expensive. I would never have managed it. But,
Alara, could you speak about that, because it was on your mission that you first had experienced depression, is that right?
Yeah. Well, I think I probably experienced it in my teenage years, but I hadn't really noticed that that's what it was. Yeah, so obviously a big part of it for me was, I had never been away from my family. I've always been a home bird, as they say. I've had a very close relationship with most of my family. And so to be going on a plane to America, I spoke about that in my podcast of my life story, supposed to go to Greece, things happened, didn't go, went to New Zealand. I just found it really tough being away from my family, and it was a culture shock. It was, I lacked confidence in myself and my ability. Like, I struggled with that even in the MTC, with teaching. I thought, how am I going to go out here and speak to people about stuff that, because for all I've been in the church all my life, I've never really been a studier. I've never really been one to really delve into stuff. So I felt my knowledge was this small, and people kept saying, oh, but it's about your testimony. And yeah, that's a great thing, your things. But I began to realise throughout my mission that, as I went on, that it isn't necessarily about your knowledge, because it was just me being me that helped people. But yeah, and I think as well, like, when I first went on my mission, I had 2 companions, and then that companion was going home. So I think this was all factors. And then this other sister missionary came in, started trying to change things and be a bit dominant, and this is how it's going to be. And I just think all of that just played into this, and my mind just snapped at that point. Like, I was in such a downer. I mean, my companion, bless her, thought she was doing the right thing by taking me around doors. And honestly, people were probably thinking, oh, she looks happy, because I would stand at the doors and I'd be like, hi, we're from the Church of Jesus Christ. Because I couldn't smile. I was, and again, because we're young girls, we're not properly trained, she thought she was doing the right thing by just getting me out the house and still going to do the work. And I'm standing at people's doors, absolutely looked miserable out my head, trying to talk to people about this church that's supposed to bring light and love and all these things, and eventually, when I was out with her, I just snapped and I just had a go at her, and I felt bad for that, because I lost it with her, and it wasn't directed at her necessarily. It was a whole bunch of things. And obviously I said, I want to go home, I can't do this anymore. Got referred to a GP. My mum and dad said, look, why don't you try? I had this idea in my head of medication and how that would look, and being dependent on it the rest of my life, and how awful it was, and how people would view me. And so, but my parents advised me to just give it a try for a little while, and if I still felt the same in a month or so, we would get me home. But I'm glad that I stayed. I've said that as much as I'm at where I'm at church-wise right now. I don't regret my mission, because I had lovely experiences. I met amazing people. I just wish I hadn't taught people a load of garbage. That's my only thing that I feel a bit about, that I've been teaching people things.
Norman still sitting here. Tact, please. Thank you very much.
Me, I don't do tact. So it's just it was very, very difficult, on me, because it was a shock to my system even to feel that way, because I've always been like, people always say I've always been this outgoing, bubbly person, I remember, sorry, I feel like I've went on a total rant now. I remember I met one of my best friend, who was one of my school friends. I met her dad a good few years back up the street, and I can't remember how we got into the conversation, but I told him that I was severely mentally ill, and I'd ended up in hospital, I was suicidal and things like that. And he was like, no way. He's like, it's like, you're always so happy and bubbly, and it just goes to show that people can come across that way, but inside they're dying,
But everybody, I mean, would people walk around with a sign around their neck? When has anyone ever committed suicide or been hospitalised or sat with depression and folk have thought, yeah, do you know what, he did look like the type?
But I felt like he really thought I was on the wind up. My friend's dad, like, I really genuinely thought he really genuinely didn't believe me, because he's like, no way, not you, because I was around him. I stayed at his house a lot with my friend, and
another thing that are not helpful for you to say. You're too happy to be allowed to be depressed.
Yeah.
What are you supposed to do with that? But you look so happy. Well, because you can be happy and be suicidal. You can be happy, and this is the thing with bipolar, with borderline personality disorder, with actually being a Mormon, when you can be spiritually or emotionally high and low at the same time. It's messed up. So I'm going to jump us back over to the talk, because we've got more to discuss.
Thank you, Donald.
And during this immensely difficult time, our family, ward leaders, members, and friends went out of their way to support and minister to us. I have never felt such an outpouring of love. I have never sensed more powerfully and in such a personal way what it means to comfort those in need of comfort. Our family will be ever grateful for that outpouring. I cannot describe the countless miracles that accompanied these events. Gratefully, our son survived, but it has taken a long time and much medical, therapeutic, and spiritual care for him to heal and to accept that he is loved, valued, and needed.
Okay, so just that massive part where medication, really important. I think it's often the last of the list that gets mentioned at church. Medication is a really important discussion to have with your doctor. We're blessed in the UK to have free universal healthcare. Medication. Yeah. Alana, do you
Sorry, I'm laughing at Doug's comment. I kind of see it two ways sometimes. With I was actually speaking to an ex-missionary who served over in Scotland, Bonnie, about this. Whereas we do get free healthcare and it is amazing, there are the kind of two sides to that. So, for example, whereas at the moment, especially with COVID, the GPs, in my opinion, are still hiding behind that, and it's very difficult to see a GP or get referrals to see a specialist or see a mental health professional or whatever, whereas Bonnie was telling me, she had an issue with something on her foot or something like that, and like she went to the GP about it, got referred, and had it removed within a week. Now that just would never happen here. So, on that side of it, where I'm grateful we get free healthcare, we don't get that quick service as you would over there, which can be a bit frustrating at times.
When it comes to depression, if you see your GP, you're pretty much on meds.
You can get on meds, but sometimes even waiting for, depending on how severe you are, because of how severe I was referred quite quickly to a CPN, because I was in a bad way, I needed somebody like ASAP. But, it definitely, with meds, I mean, it's a whole ball game with me. I seem to do my meds really well for a long time, and then, like Jane will tell you, probably for the last 3, 4, maybe longer months, in my head it's only been a few weeks. I've struggled to remember to take my medication, and I try to dig into that and see, is there a reason why I'm sabotaging myself? Because I know that medication helps. I've not been feeling at my best lately. You know, I do feel super low. I feel like I'm really short with Daisy. And I think medication would fix this. What are you doing? You know? So I'm trying to kind of dig into why, you know, I feel like I'm self-sabotaging myself at the moment. But, you know, like I say, and this is what I always come back to, is that, again, years ago, you know, we were always taught, just give it to the Lord, give it to the Lord, give it to the Lord. No, you need to refer people to get the help, because some people just need to be on medication. And I used to, again, have this, I don't know what it was or where it came from. I've just always had this thing about medication and about being reliant on it and becoming addicted and all these different ideas in my head. And, you know, and my sister has said to me, you know, one who's been out of the church for a long time, you know, if it's a choice between being on one tablet a day or however many tablets a day for the rest of your life to give you and your daughter the quality of life that you deserve, you know, what's the issue with that? You know, because I've always kind of found an excuse not to take it. And I get what people are saying, but I just think, I know you would think it's so easy to just put a couple of tablets in your mouth and swallow it over, but I don't know what it is with me. It just isn't just that easy for me. And obviously I'm working towards it. Like I did really well for a whole week. I took my medication and then boom, I think it was actually when I was away for the weekend. I think that's where I broke the cycle, being away at Sunstone. And since I've come back, it's just went to pots. So I need to sort it out. But yeah, if medication, the advice I would give to anyone is don't shy away from medication. Don't feel that you're a failure, because that's some of the things that I've felt. Don't feel you're a failure for having to be on medication, because if it gives you the life that you deserve to feel stable and have your emotions, and don't get me wrong, even on medication, I'm not saying my life is perfect on medication. I still have my low days. I still have days where I'm high as a kite, but it's more manageable, you know, more sustainable for longer periods of time. So don't think necessarily that medication's a magic fix all the time, but don't shy away from medication. Don't feel you're a failure. Don't feel you don't want to be on it the rest of your life. You know, I was told by one of my mental health professionals that sometimes people with my diagnosis within 10 years, it goes away. You know, I don't know that that's going to be my life personally. But, you know, just do medication. If you need medication, go to your GP and ask for the help. Don't suffer it alone. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with being on medication. I think there's always been this kind of stigma with mental health and medication and things. Just don't let it affect you. Get on medication if you need it.
Yeah. Okay, so the other thing that he pointed out was how his family was experienced so much love and support. I can imagine the someone who's serving in the area presidency or who is in the Quorum of the 70, if they're having a tough time, I can imagine people would be beating down their door to go and help. That's often not what people are experiencing. Do you want to maybe share some thoughts on that?
You know, it did cross my mind, you know, as he was saying that, you know, that's not everyone's experience. That's amazing that was his son's experience, but that isn't everyone's experience. You know, I mean, when I was hospitalised, I could probably count in my one hand, if you can see it, the amount of church members who actually came to see me, which was mainly a bishop. And
yeah, when we call it, when we say it's a taboo, it really is a taboo. People don't talk about it. It's people, you know, you don't often find that people are willing to go and visit someone who's been treated as an inpatient in a hospital for mental health, because of all of these preconceived ideas, or just because there are things we don't talk about in our society: death, mental health, you know, all of these things. Okay, I'm going to go and jump on to the next part.
I recognize that not all such incidents end like ours. I sorrow with those who have lost loved ones far too early and are now left with feelings of grief as well as unanswered questions. My next observation is that it can be difficult for parents to identify their children's struggles, but we must educate ourselves. How can we know the difference between the difficulties associated with normal development and signs of illness? As parents, we have the sacred charge to help our children navigate life's challenges. However, few of us are mental health specialists.
Okay, I'm going to jump in there. Okay, whether it's mental health, whether it's church history, whether it's I don't know, any part of our mortal experience, but also our church experience. I'm gonna. That was my favorite phrase of conference. Educate yourself. We must educate ourselves. And so this assumption that we're always going to know what our kids are experiencing or how they're feeling, we need to be learning about mental health issues to know how we can help. Even when there are shows on Netflix that discuss mental health issues, conversations are happening before those shows from the cast about where you can go and get help. And, you know, I just think the fact that we're acknowledging this might be hard and there are things that we need to know. I'm going to continue a little bit.
Nevertheless, need to care for our children by helping them learn to be content with their sincere efforts as they strive to meet appropriate expectations. Each of us knows from...
Okay, and jumping in again here. If there was a bit I was going to be a little bit concerned about, it might have been this one, helping our children to be content. While I totally appreciate what is being said, I don't know. I just have feelings about that. I think this comment from Donald is a really good one, that sometimes it's not about, actually I think most of the time it's not even necessarily about a feeling of discontent or wanting things to be better or different. Sometimes it just is. It's just the way we're wired. I'm going to press play again just for another little moment.
Our own personal shortcomings, that spiritual growth is an ongoing process. We now understand that there is not a simple cure-all for emotional and mental wellness. We will experience stress and turmoil because we live in a fallen world with a fallen body. Additionally, many contributing factors may lead to a diagnosis of mental illness. Regardless of our mental and emotional well-being, focusing on growth is healthier than obsessing about our shortcomings. For my wife and me, the one thing that has always helped us was staying as close to the Lord as possible. In hindsight, we now see how the Lord patiently tutored us through times of great uncertainty. His light guided us step by step to the darkest hours.
Okay, so on this, I want to say something about this little comment. This is what I think will happen in classes. We will hear the comments about how it's not always till we get through the other side of a trial or a challenge that we then see the blessings. Yeah, we can see once we come out the other side, the whole time Jesus was there helping. I dislike it. I'm not saying that it's utterly untrue. Maybe, you know, yeah, it probably is, but that's not where my focus tends to be, because so many of us either don't come out the other side and that they don't make it, that they die by suicide. And it doesn't acknowledge the pain of what the other side looks like. There's also, though, the issue of sometimes when you're not experiencing something chronic, you need there to be a finishing point. You need there to be people can need there to be a start and an end. A trial will begin and then we'll come to the end. Even if that means celestially on the other side of it, you know, at some point it will all become really clear, when actually right now is part of eternity. Right now, And my experience of mental illness is one that's probably going to be lifelong. There isn't going to be another end. And when if I were to put on my TBM hat for a moment, if I make it to the celestial kingdom and all is good, I am still going to be the me who has had all of these experiences, who understands and knows what mental health is like. There isn't, if now is part of eternity, and this is who I am, while I can look forward to being healed, I'm still going to be the me who experiences acute pain. Here's the thing that I've learned from, and I appreciate that this is not going to necessarily be to everyone's taste. This is me speaking as the TBM, which, you guys, I don't generally do too much. I am absolutely convinced that the person that I am right now is able to, kind of like Yolanda, I'm able to experience things on a deep, acutely deep level, because I experience deep pain. So I can exquisitely love being a mother and find exquisite pain in being a mother. I genuinely don't take 1 second for granted when my child is saying 4,000 times a day, I love you, and it's over and over. Not one gets an eye roll, because each one goes right to my heart. I can experience things on such an exquisite level because I know what down there is like, because I live down there. It means I can live up here as well. Does that make sense? So I know I'm not going to be healed of that, because that's a wonderful gift that I have been given. That's something that I get to experience because things have been tough, because that's where I live. Does any of that I don't know if any of that makes sense.
As long as it makes sense to you.
Oh, that was helpful. Thank you, guys. Priesthood Dispatches is saying, for a church led by God, imagine the home run it would have been if they had taught this in the 80s and 90s. Yeah. This is not news to anyone who's experiencing mental health issues. And I guess my concern is the Elder Kopischke's talk, that moment will end up being what is going to be taught in Sunday schools. It's going to be it's okay, because when we come out the other side, you will be able to see what the blessings were. You'll be able to see. And yeah, that's great if there's another side.
The thing with that is, though, like, in my opinion, like, when it comes to mental health, that's not what's important. Like, especially when you're in that, like, you're not looking for the blessings. Like, sometimes all you can see, like, I know for me, all the things I could see was, I was a horrible person. Everyone would be better off without me. I'm just causing pain to everyone. I'm just acting out and being this awful teenager to my parents. I'm just, you don't see any of that. And sometimes even when you come out at the other end, you still don't see that. Like, I wouldn't say that I've ever really looked back and thought, oh, I feel really blessed, or I really feel like my saviour helped me get through that. I don't know that I've ever felt that as deeply, and that's why, like, I guess I did find it a bit triggering when he was talking about that. My wife and I, now, that's great, that they felt that the Lord helped them through that time. But I just feel, for me, like, that in my opinion shouldn't ever be the focus of what's going on. The focus should be the person with the mental health, how you can support them, what you can do to help them better. Mm-hmm. I know you've still got to look after your own mental health, because mental health can affect families as well, and it has for many of my family. It doesn't just affect that one person, it can affect a whole family. But I guess I just think, sometimes things like that aren't helpful for people to hear. Like, I was feeling anger inside here, and I'm not taking away from his experience. I'm not taking away from that he felt that, the saviour helped him through, but I'm just like, that's not what matters. That's not what's important. Well, to me, it isn't. I'm not speaking for everyone. It's about, cultivating and helping that person with the mental health and making sure that everything in their needs is met. And, you know, I wasn't there. I don't know how they dealt with his mental health. But again, I just feel when we constantly put this focus on the saviour with people with mental health, it's not helpful at all. Like, it's not helpful, because it just, if someone's experience becomes where, like me, I don't feel the saviour necessarily help me now, I'm sure there was someone there who did help, or, you know, if I even believe in that power, I'm not sure where I'm at with that. But there may have been some higher power help that I just didn't realise. It's possible. But I just think that should never be the main focus of someone going through mental health. It should be getting the mental health professional help and just loving the person. And stop
like
this
that.
focus on church, read your scriptures. The saviour will help you through. He atoned, he's felt all your pains, all these things that we say to people. It just needs to stop, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's not helpful.
And I think that's what that's one of the comments that Donald here is making. Sorry, that Doug here's making, that it becomes a formula. The thing is, when we're at church or in a church setting, or we're in the world of Mormonism, culturally, wherever you fit with that, because we're a church organisation where that's what we're going to do. That's what we've got. It's Jesus. And if we're expecting people who are Mormon to not talk about spiritual things, then, you know, that it's like when you go to Pizza Hut and you want a burger, you're not going to get a burger. They do pizza, and in the same way as Mormons do spirituality. So if we're speaking to a spiritual leader or minister about feeling low or depression, they are going to have something to say about Jesus usually. That said, I think it's really interesting that while we've got, you know, within one area, we've got two women here, one of whom I'm like, speak to about Jesus. That's the only thing that you have of any interest to me. Don't try and fix me. Talk to me about Jesus. You're like, no, don't. You just listen. You just want to be heard. And I think it's possible for us. I think the mission of the church, the way it's set up, I think both of those needs can be addressed, as well as the people who will physically need help. You know, the sisters who need help holding each other up, the people who need to look after, you know, kids and things. It is possible for us, if we do ministering, we do home teaching, visit teaching really well, we can do both. Yeah.
Yeah, and as I say, I'm not taking away that, you know, from your experience that you may need to talk about Jesus when you're in severe mental health. I just don't feel, what I'm saying is, you know, that it should be the focus of someone going through mental health. You know, because for me, certainly it wasn't helpful. It wasn't helpful.
Yeah, it's not what you need. Yeah, absolutely. So then there's a comment here that I want to pull this in, because actually I think it's a great way maybe for us to start to wind the conversation to its conclusion for tonight. I mean, mental health, something that we're going to talk about a lot in as we go through our 21st century saints time. But the comment about right now, about how focusing on now is important. And while we were at Sunstone, we got to participate in a joint Community of Christ LDS worship on Sunday. Now, if it wasn't for the fact that the Sunday school class that was going to be held by Nemo was something that you really wanted to experience, you'd have stayed in bed, right? It was like,
totally.
Yeah. which is.
Oh, I didn't get in till 4 a.m. in the morning, so I was a bit tired.
Alana partied her socks off. And, you know, and that's totally fine, because so many people are just so burnt out with the whole experience. They just don't want to do it. But what really interests me was so many of us there had a really, really sacred experience. And what I loved that was happening with you, I was watching I was watching everybody. It was so good. There was someone who was leading us in a little bit of breath work. Can you remember that?
Yeah.
So you were doing this breathing, and it was very, very spiritual. Not at all something we would find in our general church life. That just wouldn't have, that's new agey and sort of. But Community of Christ were using the breath to help us connect spiritually to higher power, to each other, to ourselves. And I wondered, so as someone, you mentioned that you struggle with taking your medication, that mental health has been an ongoing, difficulty for you over many years. And a lot of that has tied back to spirituality and feeling shame, or feeling like if you have been low, that has meant that you're spiritually not doing very good. And often you've equated both of them together because you've been taught to. That's what leadership experience has been. If every week at church you got to be taught, you got to, as part of communal worship, you got to do that work with breath and bringing you into yourself. And I wondered what impact that would have long term on your mental health. Do you have any thoughts on that, or nah?
I think you'd asked me this, when we spoke about it, and it's difficult to kind of really get a sense of that for me, just because it's not something that's been a part. And I guess where I'm at now, it's trying to separate how I feel now to how I could have felt had that been part of. I think it definitely would have helped, because I just felt so relaxed. I just felt so at ease. I guess almost, if you compare it to the way they say you're supposed to feel in the temple, I just felt like there was not a care in the world at that moment. I just felt my focus was on the person's voice, which was so soothing. And what they were saying now, I wouldn't even be able to tell you what they were saying now, because I just went so into myself, and I did actually feel myself drifting into a bit of a sleep because I was just so relaxed. So I think if that was part of my spirituality, I'm not saying now that it would help me to go back to church or help me to stay, but I think it would have made a bit of an impact, because you're just taking that time out for yourself. Now, I think it's easy to say, yeah, but we could just do that at home. But for me, again, I've been given all these tools about doing some meditation, doing this, doing that, and I struggle at home to do it. So I think if I was told I had to go to a group once a week to do this, I probably would do it, and I would do it brilliantly. For me to do it at home, I guess I don't always prioritise myself. That's being truthful. I don't prioritise myself as needing that. I prioritise everyone else, my daughter, my family. But I definitely think if it had been part of growing up, I think it possibly, I'm not saying it would have fully taken away my mental health completely, because there was other factors in my mental health to things that happened to me as a child and things. But I think it certainly could have impacted how I viewed mental health and how, taking that time for myself. If that had been instilled in me from a young age, it possibly could have helped me to find better coping mechanisms to deal with mental health. I don't know if I'm even making sense. I feel like
you absolutely are, because, and that's why I was sort of asking, is because I've got to sort of see this journey, and bless you, you're so good at me using you as an object lesson a lot of the time.
I'm happy to, though. I'm an open book. I'll talk to anyone about anything.
I'm like, do you want to talk about meds?
Like, no, I think a lot of my open book comes from, I think I felt silenced for so long, as a child, from what happened to me growing up. And I think I felt silenced for so long that now I'm like, and I just always think, now I'm not saying that I just randomly talk to every person that I speak to about, my childhood abuse and things like that. But I just think, sometimes if you feel it's the right time to speak to someone, you just don't know who you're helping. You don't know who, maybe has gone through that, but too afraid to speak out, And then, as I say, I always do it when the time's right. But that's what I'm saying. I'm happy to be used as an object lesson.
Yeah, well, and seeing you as someone who struggles with taking your meds at times, and the amount of you absolutely know that doing sort of some mindfulness, some breath work on a regular basis would hugely benefit you. You know this, but you struggle with doing it. And so here's me watching you having this experience where someone's leading you through it. You're doing it as part of a group, as part of your spiritual work. And I can see that, oh my goodness, look how much you're benefiting from that. If you had been able to do this on a regular basis, what difference would that make in your life? And it's something that I've been asking myself about. I just think it's pretty amazing. I think my signal might be sort of playing up a little bit, so I'm sorry if there's a little bit of disruption. There's 2 more things that I want us to cover. First of all, I'm bringing family back up again. Both Alana and I have, relatively well-defined plans for if we have a mental health flare-up, how that would be dealt with. So, we know, we joke about this a lot because I will call Alana's mum. I'll just be like, I'm going to tell your mum, and I do it. And, so there are things that we would do. Alana would, let my husband know. Now, the interesting thing, I want to talk about how family, in the context of the Mormon Church, where family is the centre of everything, where family comes first, and we are failures if our family is not right somehow. What happens then when mental health is in the mix? Are family the best people to help? What place should they hold in that? Now, I'm going to give that some context by, like Alana will be able to tell you that when I have an OCD flare-up, my family, even my husband, they don't recognise it. They don't see it. They're just so used to seeing me. And I'll tell Alana this, like, no, it's no, they haven't really noticed. And Alana's like, what? But you're ill. Like, you can see it so clearly. And so I just find that really interesting. What is the place for family when we are talking about mental health in church? Do you have any thoughts?
I think, again, you've got to always go back to saying it's different for every person. Like I've said to you, like when I'm saying about the whole Jesus thing, like it's not right for me where it's right for you. I think, again, when I say family, it's not about, again, the family trying to fix you, because, again, they're not professionally trained, but it's trying to make sure that if it's needed and if they feel it's right to do so. Because for everyone, I look at some people, family trying to get involved might make the person worse. It might make them, but I guess it's getting to a point in your life where you realise, there was a time with one of my family members where it got so bad that we had to step in. We had no choice, whether it hurt them or whether it, we had to step in. Otherwise, I don't know where they would be at today. So there's times where you just have to step in, but I guess it's assessing the situation and seeing where the need is. And again, for me, it's not necessarily about family being there every minute of every day. It's just being aware. And I think, like, with the utmost respect to my family, it's like the same as you. I always say to anybody I talk to, like, my friend knows when I'm not right more than my family does. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's just because the closeness is there. And again, I am very good at hiding it. But Jane always sees through it. She knows, because I just got so used to hiding how I was feeling. I got so good at it that people didn't know that I was suffering. So I guess it's difficult because family getting involved isn't always right for every person. I love my family dearly. And again, so like, for instance, and I know my mum won't mind me saying this, I love my mum with all my heart. We didn't always have the best relationship growing up, but sometimes the way my mum says things or sometimes the way she puts it across makes me so angry and resentful towards her. And I love her so much. I don't want to take away from that. But sometimes the things she says makes me feel worse and makes me feel angry towards her. So sometimes, again, it's assessing the situation and seeing whether you are the right person for this. Like, I guess sometimes when some of my family step in, like, and say, oh, your medication, why are you not doing this? I sometimes feel judged sometimes, and I know it's not necessarily the case. Whereas when Jane says it, I don't feel that way, because I know, like, and I know with my family it's deep concern, but I don't know how to explain it. Like when Jane says it, I'm like, yeah, and Jane laughs at me because she'll go, I mean, did you think about taking your medication tonight? And I'll be like, nah. Are you going to take it? Nah. And I love it that I can be that way with Jane and just be honest.
There's
I did, that's right. I did. You know, so sometimes
want to hear.
Yeah, it's so hard to really put into words what I'm trying to say, but I just think sometimes family isn't the best option for some people, but I think there has to be some family support there to make sure that the person's getting the right support that they need.
And I want to sort of suggest respectfully, I don't know what people's family situations are like. This is, this is not aimed. Maybe it is. Do Mormons, do we enable within families? Are we like, this is, do we enable somebody, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, this is normal behavior. This is neurotypical behavior when actually somebody's really ill. Now, I think my husband would be an enabler if he gave it any thought, because he loves me, he thinks that everything I do is right. I also make clear that, because everything I do is right, See, when you're the person who everybody goes to for answers, I don't know, I wonder how much do we enable within families? And I think that's why it can be quite helpful to have a friend, or certainly a mental health professional, to have that distance. Because I think, one, you don't always recognise it in immediate family. And two, I mean, if you've got a family who can talk about it, fantastic. But the other thing is that in Mormonism, when things aren't necessarily perfect, fitting the mold, when the kid comes home from the mission, when your wife cannot get out of bed for months after she's had the last baby, all sorts of things, we're not always very good at talking about what really matters.
No. I've always said that, like, whereas my family are so close and things, like, sometimes, like, I go back to it and say, like, when I first spoke about what had happened to me all those years ago, it was dealt with at the time because I was so ill and because I then eventually ended up in hospital. But after that, it was never talked about, and that really affected me. And I don't even know to this day if my family know how much it affected me, because although I had spoken out, I just felt that was it. It was out. Let's forget about it. Let's move on. But I had so much I wanted to say, but felt I couldn't. And I don't say that to hurt any of my family, but I just think, certainly with my family, I feel sometimes they're very good at just sweeping things under the carpet. And again, it's probably a lot of conditioning. It's probably just a lot of the way society is. I always, say it depends on the times, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but just years ago, things were very different, But I think, families would be such more healthier in their relationships, and not even just families, even friends, if we just spoke more. And what I say is, it's not necessarily about speaking and hurting someone. And I think people need to realise that sometimes, even though it might hurt a little bit what someone's got to say, it's how they feel, or it's maybe how they've been made to feel by something you've done, or, So I think if we just all spoke more to each other about how we feel, I think families and relationships would be a lot healthier.
I love that. And I love this comment, from Donald again. People are messy. That is my mantra. That's what I take into church when I'm there every week. Let us be messy. Let that be okay. Let us have human experiences. Let us be human, and that be okay. Okay. The final thing that I want to talk about is something that I think we may continue to talk about on a regular basis. So if, as a thought experiment, Alana and I have done this once or twice before and completely went blank. Were women to be called as bishop, were you to have a woman bishop called in your ward? Alana, you've just been called as the first woman bishop in your ward. What would you do? How would mental health be dealt with in your ward? What are you going to do as bishop to deal with mental health?
Nothing like putting me on the spot, Jane. Well, I think
know.
it goes back to, again,
right?
a lot of what I've spoke about is make sure people are directed to the right professionals and not try to fix people. You know, just love people and tell them, you know, like I guess for me with mental health, I can empathise with people a lot because I've been through it myself. I think it's very difficult when you're speaking to someone who's never suffered from mental health. To say, you know, and I always, like, I used to say it growing up, you know, to people, oh, you know, I understand, I've been through it, but I don't say that anymore, or I know what you've been through, because everyone's experience is different. Although I went through what I went through, and although someone else went through maybe the exact same thing, our experiences are so different. So I don't understand what you've been through. But I think it was just a term that I used loosely growing up because it was the thing to say. But I now realise that that's not the case, because, you know, people's stories are different, people's experiences are different. So I can't fully understand what you went through. And I think, you know, like we spoke about, just bringing things in, like I would love to see that, you know, within the church, you know, having, I mean, that was what, all of a few minutes, if that breathing exercise.
Can I just jump in just to say that this Mormon bishop, you know, in this thought experiment, the Mormon bishop is being cuddled by their child, and it is quite a beautiful moment. Yeah, sorry. So you were saying that lasted,
yeah.
minutes.
And you know, bringing things in, and I think it's difficult because it's one of those ones where I want to say we need to talk about mental health more, but I don't know necessarily that I would just give everyone the free rein to talk about it, because it can become messy. But I think I would probably be looking at bringing in people who are mental health professionals, who are Daisy, you know, all these things, you know. I just think we've got such a good scope in the church. Well, I've said that women's aid would be great to bring into the church to talk about how, not how to deal with abuse victims, because you're not there to deal with them, but how to know what's helpful to say, what's not helpful to say, you know.
And people recovering, or
you know, sorry, I'm trying to speak to her because she's been really noisy in the background.
You're right. This is what I love, that we are real. This is real life.
I know. I realised earlier I went off on one, and I was probably on camera because I'm just like, will you just leave me alone?
No,
and there's just so much. I think when it comes to mental health, there needs to be, you know, you've got loads of mental health charities. You know, you've got Sam H in Scotland. You know, you've got, I guess, just bringing, and again, you know, I'm not saying Sunday because obviously Sunday's for worship, but we've got so much scope to hold these things, to help people, to learn a bit more about it. Because, and again, I just go back to, I think if I was a female bishop, I think I would push for change within the church, even if they did release me as the bishop because of it. And I mean, like, change and to do with training for bishops and training for leaders regarding various things, mental health, you know, just various things, I think.
Well, this is the thing, you know, because this is our thought experiment.
And I would change all the men leaders to women leaders.
Yeah, well, share in the comments if you guys have got any ideas. What would you do as a bishop to especially for our women audiences who we don't get to hear from? What would you do to you know, tackle mental health?
I was just thinking, like, nothing related. I was just thinking, we keep saying Donnell. I think, is it possibly Donnell? Is that how you pronounce that name? I realised it earlier, like I was saying Donnell, and I'm like, I bet you it's Donnell or something like that. I'm rubbish with names, like.
Yeah, if you're
so if you can just confirm if I've pronounced Donnell, or if you know, I'm just, the more I keep saying Donnell, I'm like, that doesn't sound right. Like,
so what now? I'm just trying to think if I in this thought experiment, because we're in charge, so you're being paid as a bishop, So we're all good. You're being paid and trained as a bishop. So I think that's one of the things that we need to keep in mind is the church itself. It would be really important if you're doing this job, fulfilling this responsibility, the church itself has an obligation to make sure that you are trained. So we would be expecting good quality training for, pastoral care, because you're recognising that mental health is going to be something that you're really going to have to do a lot of work in that area. People are always, it's epidemic right now, especially after COVID, as people are sort of getting back out there. So yeah, women's aid, mindfulness work as part of the worship experience, people coming in to train members, people, a focus on knowing when to shut up. Yep. Anything else? And it is Donnell. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I just realised that when I was saying it, it didn't sound right. I realised actually I should have said that a long time ago, because I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly.
So yeah, so as there you go. We've sorted. We've given some ideas for how, as women, we would tackle mental health in the church. The final thing that I think is really important that I want to have before we close up is, in the talk from Elder Kopischke, there wasn't a huge amount of signposting. So there was some. It's, recognised it's important to seek medical help, things like that. But I think when we talk about, anytime we talk about mental health, especially suicidality, is that we need to be sharing resources and pointing out where to go. Now, Alana and I have no experience whatsoever other than peer support when it comes to mental health. So that's one of the first things that we'd say, well, you absolutely can always reach out to us. We're not experts, but we can certainly point you in the direction of places that you can go to if you want to talk. We would always give a shout out to, here in the UK, the Samaritans, who are available 24/7 if you are struggling with anything that we've discussed tonight. I'm also going to link in the show notes to Alana did her interview way back when we first started this show. I'm going to link to that because there's lots of things that Alana speaks in there about her journey. So we'll put some links and some references in the show notes. And if there's anything that you need to speak with us about, then do get in touch. So as we head out, we have been asked if we can have a special guest come in and speak with us, who's going to entertain us and is going to cheer us all up for a moment. We have a new up-and-coming Scottish comedian who has asked if they can come on and share a joke. Alana, are they prepared to
hold on a minute,
come speak with us? So we're just, while the stage is being prepared for our joke we're going to get to hear, we'd like to introduce you officially to young Daisy. This is going to be Daisy's first proper appearance, although she's been around on the show quite a lot. But Daisy would like to tell us all a joke to cheer us up, and so she's just getting her act ready. We are going to hear a little bit from her just now.
Right, come on, right.
Are you ready, Miss Daisy?
It was funny. You told it to Mum. Just say it.
Why?
Right, think about it. Right, hold on a minute.
Take a big breath. This sounds like it's going to be a great joke, and everybody's really looking forward to hearing it.
Right, I think we've got it.
Why could Cinderella not play football?
So why could Cinderella not play football?
I don't know.
Because she was run away from the ball.
Because she would run away from the ball.
Oh my goodness. That was wonderful.
That was
Thank
good.
you so much. What a brilliant
She wants to hear
way
you,
end
Jen.
the show. That was brilliant.
Come on.
Daisy, thank you so much. Everybody was so excited to hear your joke, and can you see in the comments that was absolutely brilliant, and we're looking forward
It's Daisy, yeah.
to you coming back. Are you going to come back and tell us more jokes in the future? Do you think?
Yeah.
That'll be wonderful. Thank you so much, Daisy. That was very kind of you. Okay, Alana is there. Just there we go. Alana, do you want to say anything to take us out?
Yeah, just
Any final thought?
yeah, just again, I just go back to just loving people, just love people, be there to support them, and just going on what I keep saying all night. Don't try to fix people. We're not there to fix people. We're just there to love them and support them. And yeah, just that. I think that's all I've got to say. Yeah,
Love
thanks for the
Love
laugh,
it.
Daisy.
From me, I just want to say, I think a church that is talking about mental health in a really healthy way like this is wonderful. This is the kind of thing I love to hear more about. It's a spiritual act that connects us to each other, and helping us to be aware. Allowing someone to be vulnerable and to openly share something as powerful and as personal as that. I want to see more of that in conference. And okay, yeah, absolutely. Not everybody, it's not going to be the right talk for everybody. But can you imagine if this was a pattern that was set for future conferences? Wonderful, absolutely wonderful. So thank you, Elder Kopischke, for your vulnerability and your honesty. I really appreciate it. And I know that lots of other people really appreciate it too. Alana and Daisy, thank you so much. As always, your words of wisdom are just always so well received. We all love them. Audience, thank you for all your support. We will be back next week. I think we'll have a guest with us next week, and we will let you know.
And just on that, just always remember, we are always looking for guests. So anyone who would like to be on our podcast, contact either 21st Century Saints page or myself or Jane directly, if you would like to come and have a chat with us.
And that we will head out from there. Don't forget, you can like our page on Facebook and on YouTube. Share it amongst your friends.
Subscribe
and we will
on
see
YouTube.
you next week. Subscribe on YouTube.